You would have to look at it from an entire perspective for you to understand what's going on in Raila Odinga's camp. What is going on is that there is a 30 African member state, OIC, that has got 30 African member states that have decided that for us, we're going to support our candidate. 30 is a big number. That could be more than half.
Yes.
Even they managed to convince a couple of people. Somebody said, maybe that's why Raila Odinga has seen it right to come back home, because this is a big challenge for him to fight currently as it is.
Mr. Simba, thank you. Nothing could be further from the truth. But one thing we must understand, we must look at it in a wholesome view.
Yes.
In terms of, as a leader, in terms of Raila's stage, Raila is a former prime minister in this country and has been for a very long time an opposition leader. So for him to speak in that kind of a language, which many people perceive it as a very uncouth, was not actually unwelcome. Remember, the position is eyeing at AU. Despite all these issues, those are speculations. And I don't want to say that all the 30 member state Islamic countries in Africa will support their candidature of Somalia as a country, as a nation. We need to look at the current government of Kenya decided to front a candidate because it has been said it is time for East African region to front a candidate for AU. And we started campaigning for Raila. The president has been at the forefront in this. You saw the president went to Ghana, he has been to Zimbabwe and many other nations. Recently, when there was IDA summit at KICC, Raila Odinga was invited by the president. He met around 15 heads of state and government. So I would like to, from where I sit, I like to view the tantrums spewed by Raila at Mukuru recently as uncalled for. As a person interested in a position to be AU Commission chairperson, he should be able to understand what it takes to be AUC chairperson. As an AU chairperson, you are a diplomat, and you must at all times use a diplomatic language. Raila sounded like we are still in a political race in Kenya pursuing local politics. So I think for me, from Raila's side, even from his campaign, what he said was doing harm to his campaign than good. It was good to correct the government, maybe because he's still an opposition leader. He has a right to correct the government. But now, his language will have now migrated from him that radical opposition leader to now diplomatic, in a sense that the government of Kenya is now supporting him to be AU chairperson. So he should be diplomatic. So, Mr. Simba, we will and see what it unfolds.
Yes.
But we must understand the dynamics of East Africa. Does he really, do we, as a country, as Kenya, do we really have a chance?
Does it?
As a country, out of 55 nations, we have 29 Francophone countries. And like you have rightly put, we have 30 Islamic-leaning states. So, and most of these Francophone countries are also Islamic-like in nature. So if they play their religion card, and then I'm very sorry to say we may end up on the receiving end. But if we pursue the greater good, that in terms of reciprocity, in the international relations and diplomacy, there is a basic word called reciprocity, which is key. That is why countries negotiating bilateral trade agreement, you agree that we are doing this, and for us, in reciprocating, you do this for us. So when in campaigning for Raila, when you see, for example, when the president went to Ghana, for example, spoke with Nana Akufo-Addo, so Ghana agreed to back Kenya's candidacy for AUC Commission chair, and in reciprocation, Kenya has agreed to back Ghana's Foreign Affairs Minister, Shirley Ayokor, to be Secretary General of Commonwealth countries in an election that will be held this year. Where the president went to Zimbabwe, the same thing. Zimbabwe agreed to support our candidature for AUC, and then in reciprocation, Kenya agreed to back Zimbabwe's return to Commonwealth. So there's a lot of dynamics involved in this, and it is too early to say that if those Islamic states coalesce around their religion, we are losing it. But their chances.
Their chances, isn't it?
That we may.
That's it. A proper analysis from Kip this morning on why Raila Odinga will speak like that. I was on that as well. Let's look at this candidature. This is what was spoken after that OIC meeting, and I will read it. And this is the statement that the communique will also endorse Somalia's nomination of Fauzia Yusuf Adam for the chairperson of the African Union Commission for the period 2025-2028. And here, all these member states were sitting together and they said that uniformly we want to endorse Fauzia. They're not voting, they are endorsing her. They've said, we, as these 30 African member states, our candidate is Fauzia Adam. That is a lot of it, because when you look at it, if they go with 30, then Raila Odinga is left with a glim chance. 25, just like Kip's put it. So that's more than half. That's more than half. And if somebody's going to win, she already has a step ahead. That if she concentrates on campaigning with this, among these African states, these Islamic states, she's got a step ahead than Raila Odinga. Then when this has happened, the statement came out, Raila Odinga came in and hit the government heavily on the response of the floods in the country. Ruth, let's begin from there. Has Raila Odinga seen it, that this is something that is beyond one President Dr. William Ruto, that in this campaign, President Dr. William Ruto is not a factor. It is me and my efforts. Because when you have Fauzia with 30 already, then she's already a step ahead of you.
Simba, allow me to first start by taking us back a little bit.
Yes.
When we had Amina Mohammed racing and representing this nation, it was our very own that betrayed us. It was Uganda, it was Tanzania, it was Burundi, and Djibouti, who now has a candidate. So we needed to first start from learning from our previous gaps and shortfalls. We needed, and that's why it was very important to try and consolidate the East African bloc, because remember, even last time,
Yes.
it was a last minute change.
Yes.
It was a last minute change from our brothers and sisters from East Africa that then let us down. Number two, we've been unable to get our sense of belonging and use that as a card. Last time it was the Francophone nations that really went behind Chad. So they had a sense of belonging. This is our own history of the Francophone nation, and they were able to really use that to whip up emotions, to whip up support, to whip up, and of course there was the issue of the SADC members that abstained, but there was a sense of belonging. This time round, there's a sense of belonging amongst the Islamic countries. So what happens to us? It's not enough to just say East Africa, especially when East Africa is segregated as it is right now. And especially when Kenya has always been seen as a big brother that wants it all for himself, or the big sister that wants it all for herself. So it's about time that we saw beyond that. My brother here is talking about the former Prime Minister's comments and how it should have been diplomatic. And what comes to my mind is, because someone is giving you bread, you need to lay low completely. Even if they step on you, you just lie down and allow them to do it. So just because the president is campaigning for him to get the AUC seat, does not mean that he should now keep quiet whenever something is not going right. He still needs to go ahead and play his opposition role. And what that shows the rest of the nation is that this is not a man who can be compromised. But if you're telling him that because the president is actually campaigning for you, you need to keep quiet whenever you feel they need to criticize him, it means you're telling the other nations that this is a man who, when you give him something, he will come out and he will keep quiet. So if you look, let me use the example of maybe the war going on between issues going on between DRC and Rwanda. It means that if DRC then decides that they are giving the former prime minister, some gift or some reward, then he will keep quiet and take their side, because that is what he is trying to tell us. So just because the former prime minister is campaigning alongside our president for this seat, doesn't mean that he should keep quiet when there is an issue. it doesn't mean that he should now stop on his role. Remember, he has not yet gotten that seat.
Yes.
When he gets that seat, then he can stop the national politics. But until then, he still has a role to play. Not just as an opposition leader, not just as a party leader, but at the very least, as a citizen of this country.
Yes.
He needs to carry out his oversight role as a citizen of this country. So for us to expect and tell him that, look, you know, you are now going for this seat, you need to be diplomatic, we don't want you to speak. I think we are being unfair, I think we are lying to ourselves, and I think we are trying to show a very bad picture out there. When it comes to this race, I don't think I have seen our president put his best foot forward. This is a man who, whether it is through the door, the window, or the roof, will get what he wants. And so if he really, and it would work for his interest to have, you know, the former prime minister in that seat, because then he doesn't have, it weakens the opposition a little bit. If I were him, I would concentrate on ensuring that he gets it. I would concentrate on ensuring we solidify our allies. Do whatever it takes, whether it is, you know, threatening to review some of the trade agreements that might not necessarily injure us as a country, whether it is, you know, relooking at opportunities, whether it is incentivizing some of these nations. But if I were him, I would do whatever it takes to ensure that Raila Odinga gets that seat. Because one, it will look very bad for us as a nation to lose twice in a row.
Yes.
Two, it reflects on his presidency if we are unable to even garner even half of what we got last time.
Yes.
It will reflect very badly on him. But also three, Simba, if you have gone for a race and you have lost it, when you come back to your camp, you come back with the fire that you could have used there. So if Raila Odinga does not get that seat, the energy he would have used there, he will be using it in his opposition role here in Kenya. So again, if I were the president, I would do whatever it takes to ensure that he gets that seat.
That's right. Ruth, I'll be coming back to you on that because that's some more questions and answers.
Sorry,
yes.
you mentioned you mentioned about OIC.
Does it?
And the endorsement.
Does it?
And I think for me, yes, that might shake us a little bit, but I don't think it should worry us very much. Because one, like you said, it's an endorsement.
Does it?
Our president could easily sway them and incentivize them to abstain. They don't have to vote for us, but they can abstain from the vote. That way it gives us a competitive advantage as well. Mm-hmm. So they have not said they are voting for him. They have just said they had just endorsing Somalia. So we still have some room here to try and work our magic. We still have some room here to try and have conversations. We still have some room to get things right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's listen in then to this particular, because it goes on to continue. Now, the statement essentially followed a preparatory meeting of foreign ministers for the 15th session of OIC's Islamic Summit Conference held in Bajal, Gambia on May 2nd and 3rd that essentially focused on promoting unity and solidarity through dialogue for sustainable development. It goes on to say that this is a big win for Somalia because OIC has nearly 30 African states in it. And so it continues to say that indeed, when it comes to somebody having a foot ahead, she does have a foot ahead, Sankara, when you look at it, that it's easier for her to just campaign within the Islamic states through OIC, and they will get it. But when you come to EAC, we don't have so much influence within the African states because EAC is not as big as OIC.
Simba, thank you once again. In the progressive approach of a developed and united Africa, the pronouncement by the Islamic State may not really move to futility, because to fruition, because it in itself against the motivation behind a united Africa. The united Africa is not about the Francophone, Anglophone, Islam, or Christianity. It's about us being Africans. So all said and done, that declaration, being a politician, I can tell you it is just as a declaration, just as it has been said. They just declared. Even today, if I were to say I will run for an election, even my UDA protagonist here will declare and endorse me. Doesn't mean that they will vote for me.
But that means that you have a step ahead, isn't it? Like you've got a softer ground to start from.
Somalia,
yes.
No, Somalia
Yes.
is just a baby country that has got a lot of challenges. Well, actually, what Ruth has said is very practical. This is politics, and it is the only place where pragmatism overrules any other ideology. Somalia has got a lot of issues. We have a lot of foreigners here who are from Somalia. They are living here without even IDs. We have a lot of diplomatic issues. We can actually use our power as Kenya to bulldoze Somalia into dropping our candidature. That is very possible. This is politics. But let me deviate from that and come to what my brother was trying to say. Kiprotich, I don't know how new you are to this country, but allow me believe you are not very new. But for the sake of information, let me inform you. The support by the government for Raila candidature was not in exchange of human dignity, rights of the people to the states. It was not a surrender. So this in itself confirms what I've always been saying, that William Ruto is not supporting Raila because he loves Raila to become the AU chair. William Ruto is just an afraid man of being a one-term president. He sees Raila as a potential threat and therefore envisions him as being a better place when Raila is himself at a better place when Raila is outside the country in the AU. So, because he's saying Raila should keep quiet and be diplomatic, we have no language for diplomacy in the face of a failed administration, in the face of a reluctant administration when it comes to response to things that oscillate around the provisions of Article 49. Raila's pronouncements has nothing to do with politics. It is just he is just invoking what is in the Constitution. These are things that we cannot negotiate on, my brother.
Sankara, if the president is essentially leading a shuttle to campaign for you, would you turn around? But let me use Kip since you're addressing him this morning. If Kip is leading your campaign troops, would you turn around and call him takataka?
Statesmanship,
yes,
best friendship,
yes,
dictates that you tell someone what they don't want to hear when it is very necessary.
Is
William
Ruto doing Raila Odinga a favor in this campaign?
This is not a favor.
No.
I have confirmed before. Raila can live with whether he's the AU chair or not.
Yes,
we can still live.
But who's it then? Let's make it clear.
Okay.
Didn't William Ruto have a right to say, well, I do not support Raila Odinga in this?
He has a right.
But he's not.
Who bulldozed him to pronounce his support?
He's not done it. He's not done it. So this is what the Kenya Kwanza side is arguing, and I'll put it to you, Sankara, this morning, that look here, William Ruto had a right to say, well, I'm not going to support you in this by virtue of you being the opposition leader in the country. I want you to be here because he said he wants strong opposition. You do remember?
I don't even know why the UDA administration is becoming so uncomfortable with Raila's pronouncement. Now that President William Ruto, just the other day, said how they want a very robust and active opposition.
Yes.
What we've seen, and Simba, let me tell you, I said I'm going to make my points out of information and from a political perspective. Not what Kiprotich would want to tell you here as a government sympathizer. This government, William Ruto, as a president, is a man who fears opposition. This is a man who only deploys GSU to go and kill innocent citizens who are invoking what is constitutionally entitled to them. The right to peaceful protest is a local, regional, and international concept where Kenya is a signatory to. William Ruto is now supporting Raila Odinga because he believes with Raila in the country and the mess the UDA administration has patronage over since they took over power in 2022, I'm telling you, William Ruto sees himself a comfortable man in that house on the hill, with Raila being out of the country. I know you are jittered, my brother, but just keep calm. Yes. It is my time.
Yes, Sankara minute.
So, with all this, it confirms that the motivation behind William Ruto's support for Baba's AU candidature is none other than a political support. He has nothing to gain with Raila being there, if not leaving the opposition docket, so that he can do things the way they've done, because this is a government that has no procedures. This is a government of events. There is not a procedural government. In Kiswahili we say, hawatambui mchakato, wao ni serikali ya vituko. Na unaona ni vituko kila mahali. So it is the same thing.
Also,
yes, Bola. Add a little bit to what he's saying. When we say that the president is doing Raila Odinga a favor, I think we are lying to ourselves. And not only because of the issue of him being able to weaken the opposition if Raila Odinga is not here, but also remember he's trying to position himself as the gentleman who has brought together Africa, and as having brought together East Africa, as being the man who has been able to make the EAC bloc actually work.
Yes.
So for him, this win not only will, one, weaken the opposition and give him some peace, but also two, it will give his legacy as a state, as a Pan-Africanist, some strength. So for him, it is a win-win-win. And I've said this before. When we say that he has oftenly said that he wants a very robust opposition, it is one thing to make a political pronouncement to sound politically correct, but it's another thing to actually mean it and show it. Words without action is nothing. It's meaningless.
It's dead.
And we have seen severally, whenever opposition has either one, gone on the streets, we've seen the repercussions. Two, we've seen the repercussions they go through even in the legislative houses. Three, we have even seen political parties. How many political parties right now are really under the radar? They are having auditors on their neck. They are having questions from the from the registrar, left, right, and center. But if you look at a majority of those who are under that microscope,
Mr. Simba, I think
they are opposition. They're in the opposition parties. So my point is, it is one thing to say something and it's another thing to mean it. I am just cautioning us against the belief that this is a favor to Raila and not to William Ruto himself.
Kiprotich, we are not deviating. The only problem you have is you speak a coded language.
Making
So
sense then in this particular conversation. Because if you look at William Ruto was the first one who said, well, for me in my government, I want a very strong opposition. And so I want opposition to be empowered in this country, and that's what he said. Then turns around and supports one Raila Odinga to the point that Musalia Mudavadi came out to caution members of the Kenya Kwanza government and the opposition government, the opposition side, to stop talking about Raila Amolo Odinga's AUC bid, because they say this is a government project now. Whatever you say, we're on a microscope. It's going to affect his candidature. Why would you want a man who you really want to be here as the opposition leader to go take up on another job? And the conversation we're getting from the Kenya Kwanza side, Kip, is that Raila Amolo Odinga is a statesman, is a Pan-Africanist, so he should go and focus on that. So you leave the opposition for who? Kip.
Thank you, Simba. I think I'm surprised with my friends here.
Yes.
This kind of just thumping by Sangara is what made them lose election in 2022. You even like the kind of Prakadasho, the like of things, they even laid out a red carpet at KICC that they won the election.
Did you know we believe to rig elections?
No, it's my time.
Yes, Sankara, let him respond.
Kindly. So the kind of just thumping is what made them lose the election, because in a campaign, you do it strategically, with an end goal in mind, with a plan, with a proper plan. That is why when William Ruto during campaign said he's a man on a mission, and he accomplished that mission. He's also a man on a mission to deliver this country, to get back the economy in pushing this country. So I would like to correct my friends, my friend Ruth Polo and Sangara. The act of government supporting Raila's bid to AU, one is a patriotic thing, because we said if it was East African community and Kenya has an opportunity to front a candidate, fronting Raila is a patriotic act. As a Kenyan, in fact, myself as a person, I will be proud to see any other Kenyan serving in AU. Be it Raila, be it anybody else, I'll ever support. So that was not to buy Raila's silence. And remember what I said at the beginning of this discussion, that Raila now is pursuing a continental job, which is a diplomatic job. He's an ambassador, he will be an ambassador of Africa across the world, advocating for Africa's interests and that thing. So there are things in international relations, in diplomacy, that demands of a diplomat to do. That is why you will never hear ambassador of the United States to Kenya mentioning things that are so uncouth. So we are not saying Raila keep silent. Raila can still criticize the government, but he'd have to choose the choice of what is what we are questioning here. We are not questioning him, asking questions to the government, but the choice of words are so, I don't know how to describe it, but it was so uncouth that that any diplomat is not expected of any diplomat. You can imagine Raila now as AU chairperson, as this guy want to put it, he will be the African president. How can a president, you'll never hear William Ruto speak kind of a thing. So for me, let me come back to Raila's chances at AU. Yeah? One, Somalia's candidature, I think I want to say is not in good faith. Because one, Kenya has done a lot for Somalia. From 2011, trying to maintain peace in the country, our soldiers went there, maintained peace, trying to reform their Somalia's defense forces. So we have done many things as a country to Somalia that even morality demands that they could have reciprocated and backed Kenya's candidature. But now we don't know what is happening behind the scenes, such that Raila come out and throw such kind of tantrums. You remember also, my friend Simba, there are questions around education qualifications. So we don't know whether, we don't know what is happening behind the scenes.
Even before you go there,
yes.
I mean, since you're saying that now Raila Odinga is a project for the state,
yes,
that when we see headlines like this, then we should be questioning what the Foreign Affairs Ministry, together with Dr. President William Ruto, PhD, are doing, knowing very well then how much Somalia is close to us, that indeed, if we are friends of Somalia, then they should be supporting us in this. That when you see headlines like this, as opposed to questioning what Raila Odinga is saying, or Raila Odinga's credentials and this, we should be questioning the efforts that the President and the Foreign Affairs Ministry are putting into this, because the person who spoke about this, Somalia's Foreign Minister, that is Ahmed Mwalim Fiki, who said, well, for us, we support our candidate.
Yes.
Should we be questioning the government more than we should be questioning one Raila Odinga, just like Booth said, that this, according to President Dr. William Ruto, is good for him because he wants to be seen as a man who has brought Africa together?
I think it is the government's position as far as Raila's candidate is concerned. One, people should know this election is happening next year, February.
Does it?
So there's still time to canvass, to campaign around those issues. If you want to question government is very determined to have Kenya win that position. You see even recently, as late as recently, when Kenya hosted around 15 heads of states, William Ruto organized a meeting, a private meeting, between the president, Raila Odinga, Prime Cabinet Secretary, who is also the Foreign Affairs Minister, to speak to the heads of state in terms as part of the lobbying process. What is happening now is lobbying. You know, actual candidates, shortlisting is still happening. We don't know how many candidates will be on the ballot. Yes. So because now we are hearing Somalia is fronting a candidate, Djibouti is fronting. So it will come now at a time when the final list of candidates are out, is where now the real game will begin in terms. Because even Djibouti fronting a candidate and Somalia fronting a candidate is good for us. Because one, both are Islamic leaning nations. And they love to divide. If both of them go all the way to the last point, it will be a win-win for us because they divide their Islamic votes. So even if the only Islamic nations only endorse Somalia as candidate, but Djibouti is coming in. But Djibouti has always been against Kenya for many times. Look at even at UN Security Council meeting and many other things. So there is time to strategize. So we are not saying Raila is winning, but in my point, to this far, there's also factors that may not work well with us. You will realize, you know, Kenya now is a nation. Kenyan foreign policy direction now is leaning towards the West. You get it? We are now pro-West than pro-East when President Kenyatta was there. But you realize this, most of the West African countries who are Francophone speaking nations are now anti-West. So going forward as a government, as we mount campaign machinery to win the AU seat, we must be able to look at these dynamics, how best we navigate. You remember in West African nations, these countries that have undergone coup, that has led by juntas,
Yes.
they are against the West very, very much. So but for us, we are leaning towards the West. So we may need to see how are we going to deal with these people so that we can
Pretty
support.
much.
Lastly,
Yes.
lastly on that,
Yes.
Raila also as a person should be able to put his best foot forward. From where I sit, Raila is not serious about AU positions. Raila is interested in becoming an African Commission chairperson, but he spends a lot of time meeting European ambassadors and American ambassador. So I wonder what value they bring. To
But
that
you just said you are
campaign.
pro-West as a government. What is wrong with
whose
Raila
failure is
meeting
that?
the EU?
Kip, I mean,
I'm not saying it's bad.
yes, yes, Kip, whose failure is that? If Raila Odinga is a government project now, then the Foreign Affairs Ministry, and together with the Kenya Kwanza government, they should be advising on exactly how to present himself right now.
No, that was just an additional point. That says that I'm saying the campaign period is not yet.
Yes. At the point, but Ruth, I want to take up on this one as well. So Carol will be coming
Just
to you.
put something small.
Yes.
You have not finished. I'm
Could
saying
you clear them, please?
Raila should be able now to, as
Yes.
a person, because he is meeting European ambassadors. He has met Norwegian ambassador, Australian ambassador, UK ambassador, and the rest, even the US ambassador, is meeting them in a personal capacity to speak about his vision for the continent and many other things. I think also he should up the game. I'm not saying it's bad for him to meet these ambassadors, but it's also good for Raila to be lobbying other African diplomats.
Does it?
But it's the good thing is his campaign team is planning this month of May, is planning to meet around 30 African ambassadors. That is chaired by Eritrean ambassador, who is the Dean of African ambassadors. So they are meeting, that part of the Raila's team is the Eritrean ambassador, who is the Dean of African ambassadors. His team led by former ambassador to US Elkanah Odembo and former ICAD executive secretary Mahmoud Halim. So I think they are planning. Plan is on course. So what were to Lisa Boli? Raila
Yes.
will deliver the seats.
Pretty much.
But he must behave.
But here's a question that we're asking about this, that then Ruth, that every other thing that Raila Odinga does now is looked as the Kenyan property now to deliver this particular seat. At the point where Raila Odinga fails to clinch this particular seat, we can't blame Raila Odinga. We will blame the government, and most importantly, RUTO for failing to deliver this particular seat. So, if indeed it is RUTO's job to deliver this seat, shouldn't Raila Odinga work with him? How is it possible that just last week, Raila Odinga and Dr. President William Ruto were together in a meeting where he met 15 African states, and they had a presser together, right there, predominantly behind President Ruto when he was doing that presser. Raila Odinga was there conspicuously. Then turn around and speak like this against a man who is fronting him and opening doors for him to clinch this particular seat. As Raila Odinga said, AUC, that's your job. My job for opposition would continue. Is that the scenario that we're saying, Ruth?
One thing I must say is that I respect Raila Odinga for that move, 100%. And I want to use a different example that's almost similar.
Yes.
I want to assume you and I are brothers and sisters.
Does it?
You have a company, I come and work there. And I am staying with you, right? Because I'm assuming I am new in Nairobi, you've given me a job, so I cannot fend for myself.
Does it?
Now, when we go to work, right, we are in the office. I cannot bring the issues that we have left home into the office. There needs to be a thin line, right? So if we argue in the morning, I cannot bring it to work. You've given me a job, we are siblings, but a line has to be drawn. It's the same thing. He has been given the duty to campaign for Raila Odinga.
Yes.
But Raila Odinga also has an opposition role. That line has to be drawn. You cannot mix issues. And you know, there's something Kip said. Kip said, Raila will deliver the seat, but he must behave. What does that tell you? We are giving you the seat on condition that you keep quiet.
We are saying,
so it is a conditional
don't
support.
spoil the chances.
It is a conditional support.
Yeah.
When you're supporting someone unconditionally, it
Yes.
means you're not going to bribe them, you're not going to silence them,
That's
you're not
it.
going to force your hand on them.
Yeah.
You're guiding them when you're campaigning.
That's
for
it.
them.
But what do you expect from? Okay, Ruth, I get you. Every other person listening to you and say, "Wow, you're making sense." But then Kip is also saying, "Hold on. If I'm supporting you unconditionally, how should you be behaving as well? This
Just
person that I'm
because-
supporting
Just because
unconditionally."
you're supporting me unconditionally
Yes.
does not mean now that when you cough, I bend. That now when you tell me to run, I run. When you tell me to jump, I ask
Yes.
how high. That it doesn't mean that.
What about-
I should still be able to carry out my duties.
That's it. What
Simple.
about
We are telling-
what
don't
about
spoil
how
your
you
chances.
cough? What about how you cough? Don't cough in my face. I mean, turn around and cough.
The thing is this.
Yeah.
The thing is this, Simba.
Yeah.
Raila Odinga is not new to William Samoei Ruto. It is not that they've met the other day. He has been with him in the political space. They even served together in ODM.
Does it?
So he knows the kind of person he is dealing with. So it is very unfair and it is very cunning to now say or expect that because William Samoei Ruto is campaigning for him, he is then going to change his ways. He is going to, you know, lessen his opposition stance. Remember, this is a man who's following, who really, you know, covers and represents the common Mwananchi. And they look up to him. We saw in 2022 when he, you know, when he was with the former president, Uhuru Kenyatta, Kenyans were crying. Even the current Kenya Kwanza team members kept on saying, opposition is dead. And we kept on telling them, why don't you play the role of opposition? So this is someone who everyone looks up to still play his opposition role. But now we are telling him, because we are giving you the carrot, you need to behave. You don't behave, we'll take it away and we'll use the stick. That's what we are saying. And I think it is very unfair and it is very cunning. And the culture that we are going to now breed is that even within our organizations, within our institutions, within even parastatals and government institutions, we are telling them that if someone gives you a job, you are not supposed to go and oversight them. You are not supposed to go and you know, put them to account.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, that person has given you something. That's what we are trying to say, that if someone gives you something,
Yes.
you silence their voices. If someone gives you, and what I can equate this to is that if my husband gives me a job, for example,
Yes.
and he beats me up, because he gave me a job, I should keep quiet. That's what we are equating it to. So we really need to be careful with some of these cultures that we encourage because they have ripple effects.
Does that?
And it sets precedent.
Does that? If you
One-
Ruth,
one
just one,
second,
I wanted to answer this particular question just before you. That what the opposition is saying is that it's fine. I mean, we will not expect you to stop correcting us. This is good that you're doing it, but how are you doing it?
yes.
Is that, but
You're spoiling the chances.
That's
So
how you
this
can
is what we are
correct
trying
me.
to do.
Ruth, that's how you can correct me. But well, don't go right outside there and start abusing me. I mean, correct it. Talk about the situation.
The thing is this, Simba, like
Yes.
you said, he is not new to Raila Odinga, so he knows. But also remember, Raila is a politician. He could easily call him and tell him, look, Appa, you're going the wrong direction. But this is a man who represents the common Mwananchi, and they need to see that this man
Yes.
is just as angry as we are in
Yes.
the issues happening. What the president and his team need to focus
That's
on
it.
is delivering the seat. Because he's trying to be the Pan-Africanist, and he's trying to set a legacy for himself in the continent.
That's it.
Let the other nations say, despite the firm opposition, despite all these things that they deem unfair, he still delivered the seat.
Pretty much. Guess what, Sankara? But I'll address this particular point before we move away from this topic. That yes, you can correct me. That we understand. But then, Sankara, I'm supporting you and campaigning for you. You don't turn right around and start abusing me.
Simba, let me say something before I even get to that.
Does it?
You see, we must be politicians while analyzing politics. The Somalia's candidature is, in my own concept,
Yes.
an idea to split the Islamic vote and teach the ambitious and arrogant Djibouti a lifetime lesson. That is possible. Wait and see. Secondly, let us not confuse. Yeah, because you know, once Djibouti is an Islamic state and as a candidate, then Somalia, who is a neighboring country and probably in wars with Djibouti, is also fronting a candidate. This idea of abstinence will come in at that particular point when Somalia has a candidate, Djibouti has a candidate. Somalia, some of the Islamic States votes will abstain, others will support Somalia, others will support Djibouti. Then at the end of the day, Raila will have it. It is a strategic campaign. And as a politician on a race, you should never be intimidated by any moves that an enemy makes. All said, back to your point, you can correct me while still being a statesman.
Yes.
Well, let us be realistic. Raila wasn't addressing AU states when he addressed the floods and government's incompetence when it comes to flood response, mitigation, and preparation. Raila was addressing President William Ruto and Kenya Kwanza MPs and leaders. Why do they want to turn the audience to go Africa while the audience is local? So Kiprotich, you know, I don't know where he went to school. Maybe he has a problem with literature. If he understands the audience, then he will swallow his, he will swallow his pride and maybe try to reconnect what Baba was trying to say. Raila wasn't addressing Uganda or South Africa or Tanzania. Raila was addressing William Ruto. He's his friend before being politicians. These are guys who work together. He is addressing William Ruto at a personal capacity and as the opposition leader. So when Raila addresses William Ruto, the language he understands, you know, Ruto is a very tough-headed man. He is a president. We know him because this man graduated all the way from YK92 all the way to deputy president for 10 years and then president. Raila knows him better than Kiprotich knows William Ruto. I believe Kiprotich first knew William Ruto on a gazette or on a TV. Raila has worked with William Ruto. So Raila wasn't addressing Africa, he was addressing the Kenya Kwanza leadership. And diplomatic language that, I think that overrides everything that I want to say, because the diplomatic language they want should come in when Raila starts to address something that is international in a very undiplomatic language. Then they have a point. But here, they are all pointing fingers at Raila saying this and that. I want to hear Kiprotich quoting what Raila said, which was undiplomatic, then give his point. I think that would be so sensible. And then again, the interest of AU is to make Africa best for all Africans. How do you expect Raila to fight for a better Africa with a poor Kenya? Charity begins at home. I don't know whether Kiprotich is aware. So you first better your home, then you walk out and start telling others that, you know, in as much as I'm coming here, where I come from, the roads are working, the sanitation is in place, healthcare is in place. But here Raila was addressing a population whose houses have been demolished, they've been left in the cold, there is no medical supplies, security is now in question. Then Kiprotich wants Raila to come and address William Ruto as if he's addressing a diplomatic audience. My friend, this is politics. When Baba is addressing locally, he knows what to say. I'm not here to speak for Raila, but that is what Kenya Kwanza, even if I were in Raila's position. In fact, if that was undiplomatic, then I would have been worse, because I've told them what they don't want to hear. The problem with these people of Kenya Kwanza is that they are used to a coded language where people do not think outside the box. If you come with the box, then they view you as a potential threat. You are not supporting Raila to buy his voice. You are supporting Raila because it's the best candidate from this country. If your support is alluded to buying his voice, you can as well choose another person and support. Raila is not the only Kenyan who can lead AU. So that should be very clear. He is the opposition leader, is the party leader, ODM is the azimio party leader. They are the coalition, the second largest in the parliament. So you don't expect the people's president to, keep quiet as the people are suffering. Then you want to invoke diplomacy. So you want diplomacy between azimio and Kenya Kwanza, or between Raila Odinga and President William Ruto. Those are friends. Let us just tell people what they don't want to hear. If that is what makes the interest of the people and Article 49 be implemented by this sleepy government.
Pretty much. Guess what? If we can keep, if you can allow, please. I want us, for the sake of time this morning, I want us to move into another subject this morning, which is essentially how the government has responded to floods in the country. What we do know as we start this morning, Sheila, if you can then take us to the dailies this morning so we can have a look at what the threats are now. Both the Daily Nation and the Standard address something completely different, but that is attached to the effects of the flooding situation in the country. The Daily Nation is pointing to the waterborne diseases that have already claimed 6 and counting on it. And health experts are warning that indeed it's going to be widespread, that this is just the beginning, because these rains are going to be with us all the way up to June. Now, if you cross over to the Standard, they're talking about something different as well. They are talking about how potential food crisis is going to come into the country because farmers are crying of the destruction that these rains have rained on their farms. So that's exactly where we are. So I want us to go back to the story for my Mayo. By the way, the death toll continues to rise on a daily basis as more bodies continue to be found in those rubbles. For now, let's take a look and see exactly what the state is speaking about that particular issue as we start on this process for flooding in the country. Let's take a look.
Funeral expenses of all the families who have already retrieved and received their loved ones. We will support the families so that we share with them the pain. And tomorrow, for those who are affected, we will be able to have a general mass service to remember the souls of our departed countrymen and women.
This comes amid the death toll rising to 61, with various families still unaware of where their loved ones are, as Martha Wanjiku narrates.
Kuanzia hiyo siku tumekuwa tukitafuta ndugu yetu, brother in law. Yeye alikuwa tu kwa nyumba na nyumba zote zilienda. Hakuna kitu libaki, mawe zikaenda, everything. Yani nikaa tu mchanga ya kawaida, hakuna mtu alibaki hapo. So juu alikuwa ndani na majirani wenye wako hospitali, juu wenye hawako hospitali wamekufa, wanatuambia walimuona masaa ya jioni akiingia kwa nyumba. Tena ile kitu inafanya tujue hakika hayuko, yeye mwenyewe ndiye angekuwa anatutafuta juu pia yeye anajua maybe tungekuwa kwa hiyo hali. Lakini ana simu yake ikatrakiwa, ikaonekana ilizimia tu hapo kwa hiyo area.
The same is the situation with Mary Wanjiku's family.
Wakati maji ilikuja, tulibebwa, mimi nikaswim kwa maji, nikaenda nikajitokelezea pahali. Wakati nilijitokelezea hapo, nikasimama tu hapo. Nikiwa nimesimama tu nikaona mtu amekuja, nikamuita, tukaongea, nikamuulizia watu hao wako wapi, akaniambia hajui, na mimi nikamwambia watoto wangu sijui pahali wako, lakini tulikuwa tumebebwa pamoja na watoto wangu 3. Lakini 2 wameonekana na mmoja hajapatikana.
The families are now calling on the government to expedite the search for the bodies of their loved ones.
So tungeomba tu serikali tusaidie, tupate huyo mpendwa wetu. Juu hakika hata jirani yetu tu hapo bado hajapatikana.
Serikali inisaidie nipate huyo mtoto, hata kama amesaa aga, nitashukuru tu Mungu. Nataka tu nijue pahali yako.
Ian Keitani, Lookuptv.
Ian Keitani with that particular story. So it's a story states that even as we are seated here this morning talking about how funeral arrangements are going to be taken up by the government, there's still families within that particular region who do not know where their loved ones are. In fact, as we speak this morning, the numbers of the unaccounted flood victims in the country continue to rise. There are fears that the numbers that we're reporting as the media are essentially less than what we should be quoting, because if somebody is missing, just like the families are saying, if somebody is missing for more than 3 days, then you are fearing for the worst in a flood hit area. But we can't talk about that because the government has to come in and confirm that indeed the numbers are as they should be. Kip, I wanna start with you. Are you happy with the way that the government, are you satisfied? You don't have to be happy with it that the government has responded to the flooding situation in the country. We speak today when we're still waiting for the National House to approve the 10.6 billion expenditure that the government wants to put in and the support of counties and other governments or other agencies in fighting the impact of the flood.
a very sad state of the situation. Allow me, Mr. Simba, to first send my condolences to the families of those who have lost their loved ones. Also to extend my sympathies to those who are affected negatively by the floods, both in Maimayu, Nyando, and many other parts of Kenya.
Yes.
There's nothing much we can say, because now the reality of climate change is really hitting hard on us, and it comes at a time that we are now trying to stabilize the economy, but things now is like we are returning back. For the government to come to a point, even in the case of Maimayu, to say we are helping you foot the burial costs, and also those affected, we are trying to give you a new lease of life. We'll try to organize for you a place you go, and we support you until things are normal. You can be able to return back or get you a different place where you can live and start a new life. I think that is empathy from the government. And from where I see it, we should be able to appreciate those efforts, because the government is putting the government has activated every avenue it has within its power to make sure that we try and save all these situations.
Yes.
For instance, now deployment of military, deployment of NYS officers. You saw the president even himself taking the forefront. The president visited Madari, at least to get a glimpse of really what is happening in the ground. That shows concern from the government.
Yes.
And I think as Kenyans, we need to understand that flooding situation are vagaries of nature in which as human beings we have no control over. So the best we can do is to stand in solidarity with those Kenyans who have been negatively affected, give at their own personal levels, give the support where we can, where the government support or other agencies like Red Cross have not come in, extend support. As part of the patriotic nature, we support the government efforts. So for me, I think the government is doing right, doing all it can to make sure that we don't lose lives anymore in this situation.
Very much. Guess what? I'd like us to take a tiny breather at this particular point, because we continue with this particular conversation once we come back. Because once we come back, then the question is going to be, up to now, as we speak this morning, there is a certain wording that has not come from the government that this particular issue is not yet a national disaster. And we do know the modalities of the government declaring a national disaster. For those people who don't remember, COVID-19 was declared a national disaster, and you saw what the government did, how much money they spent, what sort of help they got from different governments in fighting that particular disaster. Are they afraid? How many lives do we have to lose for this particular flooding situation in the country to be declared a national disaster? Once we come back, that's what we put across to Ruth, Sankara, and keep right here on The Morning Draft.
Jambo, leo tuko shopping na kama kawaida niko na mshindi wetu wa leo. Rafiki unaitwa nani?
Kevin Amala.
Kevin Amala. Umetoka sehemu gani?
Huko Kangundo.
Oh, Kangundo, Machakos County. Machakos County unafanyanga nini hapo Machakos?
Mimi nafanya kazi mjengo tu, ni fundi.
Wewe ni fundi wa mawe. Good, wewe ni mason. Sasa umecheza loto, mara ya mwisho ulicheza shilingi ngapi ndio ukue hapa kama mshindi?
Nimeshinda tu 100,000.
100,000.
Nimefurahia sana.
Na ulicheza na pesa ngapi?
50 tu.
50.
Nacheza 50.
Hey, shilingi 50 na tunafanya shopping kwa ma TV kubwa kubwa. TV lazima uone mpya. Lazima sasa uta watch Lotto live direct. Yes. Basi angalia pale kwenye TV. Waambie wacheze Lotto sio ndoto, na waambie ulicheza aje Lotto ndio ukakuwa hapa kama mshindi.
Naambia wengine wanaweza cheza kama mimi. Hii ni nzuri sana hii Lotto. Hatumii pesa mingi sana.
Over 18s only. Gaming can be addictive. Play responsibly. BCLB number 00000898.
As the night falls, we come to life to bring you a comprehensive broadcast from the numerous events happening across our 47 counties.
When it breaks, it matters, and each story is important.
If it's Thursday, join me, Nancy Lima, and my able panelists as we break down the law jargons and analyze the Constitution in a way only you can understand.
The news cycle never stops, neither does time. We cover each and every sector and present to you factual and accurate occurrences. This is where facts win the day. Join me,
Nancy Lima,
Ian Keitani, Tuesday, every Wednesday,
Thursday,
as from 9 p.m. on The Insight, only on Lookuptv.
Are you an SME looking for a media partner? Look no more, as Lookuptv got you covered for all your visibility and marketing needs. We at Lookuptv understand your business needs and want to work with you on your marketing journey, giving you solutions that will take you to the next level. Call us today on 0707 572 358 or send an email to sales@lookuptv.co.ke and kickstart this amazing journey. Welcome to Lookuptv, your official SME media partner.
Fikra zao ni picha ya yale waliyaona na simulizi ingali moyoni.
Kijana wangu ndiye akaja kanigongea mlango akaniambia, mama amka, maji imekuja na imefika kwa nyumba ya kina Vini.
Kufungua mlango nikapata maji imeshafika hapo kwa mlango yangu.
Hii ndio moja kati ya shule ambazo wakazi ambao wameathirika vikali na mvua inaendelea kunyesha wameweza kujisitiri, na wengi wao wameishi hapo kwa muda sasa.
Kinachowaponda zaidi ni kuwa bado hawajapata makao. Wanakoishi kwa muda tu wameagizwa kuondoka. Watakwenda wapi?
Contractor anataka kuendelea na kazi hapa, kwa hivyo ananiambia tujipange, tunataka kutoka hapa. Hatujajua pa kuenda, juu hatuna pesa, hatuna mbele wala nyuma. Sasa hatujui tutafanya aje.
Na iwapo watatoka, serikali iweze kuona ni vyema iweze kuwatoa sehemu hii na kupeleka sehemu bora zaidi.
Haya ni kwa mujibu wa bunge la wenyeji saa 2 kamili.
Kipindi ni ukulima ni mali na Manjoro. Kumbuka, hapa ndipo unajifunza mambo mengi kuhusu ukulima. Kilimo ni uti wa mgongo wa nchi, na ukiwa na Njoro unajifunza. Kumbuka, angalia mwenyewe. Tunakuambia ukitaka kujua tips za ukulima, ungana na sisi kwenye Lookuptv. Every Sunday unatukuta pale saa 10, tunakuonesha kuhusu ukulima. Ukulima wa mimea, ukulima wa ng'ombe, ukulima wa kuku, ukulima wa mbuzi na yote ambayo yanahusiana na ukulima. Kumbuka nini? Kipindi ni ukulima ni mali.
To the last part of our conversation this morning. Now, we're going to move a bit quicker on this particular issue. Just before I bring in Bolo in on this particular conversation, we're going to look at another story that we filed right here at Lookuptv on the state of the floods in the country. Before we come in and answer that question, do you think the situation will be different if the government then comes out and says, we now have a national disaster called floods in the country that we're going to focus on to mitigate in the country? Let's take a look.
This has been the situation for the better part of the day after River Nyando busted banks taking control of the town. In the midst of the devastating situation, business owners in this region, along with thousands of Kenyans from various parts of the country, bore the brand of Mother Nature posed by the prolonged rainy season.
I work here. Here is my shop. This water came here yesterday at around 2 p.m. when we were here. Madhara yenye nimepata, everything inside is full of water. We can't work inside there. I have 4 machines. They are full of water, clothes, school uniforms which we made inside there. They are all full of water.
Concerns are mounting regarding the potential collapse of buildings in flood-affected areas of the town, reflecting the growing anxiety among residents about structural integrity amidst the deluge.
Shida kubwa kabisa ambayo tuko naye hapa ni kuhusu hizi manyumba zetu. Unajua maji kikaa kwa nyumba hii muda yote inaweza bomoka. Sasa ile ofu tumekuwa nayo sana ni hizi manyumba kubomoka.
Calls are being made to the government to implement a sustainable solution to address the recurrent flooding crisis in the region.
What I can tell the government is to look how they can prevent this water so that next time it can't affect us like this. That's what I can tell the governments to help us so that this they control it. So next time when it comes, it doesn't affect us too much.
In Kirinyaga County, more than 2,000 families have been compelled to leave their homes due to severe flooding caused by heavy rainfall. Kirinyaga County Commissioner Hussein Alaso has advised residents living in flood-prone regions to consider moving to higher grounds to avoid potential risks.
Karibu familia 2,000 wameweza kuadhirika, lakini hakuna wale wako ambao kwa kambi la wameweza wengine wametoka baada ya maji kusubside, wameweza kurudi makwao, lakini kuna watu wachache ambao bado wanaishi na majirani yao na pia katika na familia wengine, na hao bado tunaendelea kumonitor na pia tunaendelea kuwasaidia.
After a week of adversity, emergency responders successfully rescued a 74-year-old man who was stranded perilously close to flood waters. Nyolongeti found himself encircled by flood waters from Athi River while keeping watch of livestock on Daini Island in Wamonyo. He was later rescued and transported to a hospital for medical attention.
Nilisombewa ni maji pale kwa Kidhama. Na maji ikawa mingi kwa wiki mzima. Kule nilikuwa nalisha ng'ombe. Nilikuwa nalisha ng'ombe. Nilikuwa nalisha kwa siku mingi, si moja ama wiki moja ama mwaka moja, ni miaka mingi. Lakini maji yakuwa namna hiyo.
Lookuptv.
Does that across majority of the counties, and by the way, we look at the Met Department, they're saying 33 counties now are drenched in this floods. The number of people who are getting displaced now rising day by day. As of yesterday, 235,000 in the country. Declared a national disaster, and then the approach changes from the government. We haven't seen it.
Every time I look at the floods issue, I'm very sad.
Yeah.
I was reading about, it's not that it's caught us by surprise. We expected it. Earlier on in the year, we had certain governments say that they've used that money to procure boats. I'm not seeing those boats. I mean, if you've already procured them, they should be there, right?
Yes.
So now when there is an issue, at that time, even though people were mocking you and saying, you've procured boats, the rain is not there, the rain is here now. It means those boats are there.
They should be now.
So assuming even in that mediocre management effort, let us just use it as an example. You procured boats, where are they now? You've now left it for comedians like Eric Omondi to now build boats and use it as PR gimmicks. So I think for me, I feel like the government could have done better. But my eyes right now are not so much on national government. My eyes right now are on county governments. Are on county governments, are on political parties. And I say this because, number one, county governments have the Disaster and Risk Management Act. They've got the funds for it. A lot of these things are now devolved. They are the frontline workers when it comes to sorting out some of these issues. And so I could have expected a bit more effort.
Yes.
And unfortunately, we are at a place as a country whereby we no longer follow our laws. As citizens, we don't know the laws that exist. We don't know the budgetary allocations that exist. And so if any elected leader does any PR gimmick or does anything small, then we applaud it. When Wavinya Ndeti was amongst the very first governors to now go out, carry people on her backs, everyone was applauding her. They were all saying, wow, this is a governor that we should, all other counties should have elected a governor like this, women governors, and she was being applauded. And the question was then, where are all these other governors? So what happened very soon, we now saw other governors come out to do the same thing. But how many of them have you now seen saying, we've got these funds, instead of just distributing the relief food, we are now going to ensure they are safe houses. You have seen the conditions people are living in for those who have run to schools, to seek shelters in schools. You've seen those conditions. It's an open space. Some of them have then been able to, get some of these waterborne diseases as a result. There is no health care there. So they are just, it's a condition that we would not want to be proud of as a country. So for me, in as much as national government is also really slacking, I'm also putting county government to task.
Yes.
And I say I'm putting political parties to task as well, because if you look at the video that I just played of Nyando, I can tell you there are two major political parties in this country that have visited the Nyanza region more than 7 times between 2021, when we were, just drumming up for elections, and last year, after most of them have already, done the election and they've settled in. They have, each of these two major political parties have visited that region not less than 7 to 9 times. But now that there is a disaster, they are nowhere to be seen. These are people you go to seek your support from. These are the same people that you go to ask them for votes. And so I think, and we cannot say that political parties have no funding. We cannot say if they wanted to help, they would have helped. So right now, I'm urging citizens, look at those political parties. If your political party has not come to your aid, if your political party has not so much as even called to find out, are our members okay? What kind of help can we give them? You need to think twice. These political parties are mandated to have at least 24 offices, right, across the country, at a minimum. Has any of them told you we have relief food there? Have any of them put up a medical camp? Have any of them told you we can give X number of people shelter there? If none of them have even just tried to do it,
yes,
wait for them in 2027. Please do wait for them in 2027, because it is showing a lot. When we had the Westgate attack, which is also a disaster, and just to also show how much we never learn in terms of preparedness for risk and disaster management as a nation, we had a community of Indians, and I don't know if it was an association or what it was, who set up outside and were giving food. They were giving food to the victims that were just leaving. They were giving food to the soldiers that were there. They were giving food to the journalists that, were camping there. They were the first ones to come out late in the night and say, we are here, right? And then people picked up afterwards. At that time, I can tell you the amount of politicians that we saw. I can tell you the amount of efforts that people put up. Had it been in more developed nations, you'd have seen that it's these politicians who are folding their sleeves to ensure that as you come out, they're able to help if it is sorting out traffic. They are there. So I think we need a different approach, and we need a different mindset when it comes to the disaster and risk management, because there are two issues here. There's what is backed up by the law,
yes,
from the different policies that we have, the budgetary allocations, etc. But there is the civic duty. There is the patriotism question that is there. Yes. There is the ethical question that is also there, and that is really lacking. And that is why whenever we have got an ethical issue, whenever we've got a moral issue, it is very difficult then to be able to even follow those policies.
That's so.
And so for me, those are the two issues. But my eyes majorly are on county government and not necessarily on national government.
Pretty much. Sankara, I want you to weigh in on this issue as well. The response that you've seen so far, are you satisfied with it?
Allow me to say that this is a country of jokers and leaders who are acting leadership responsibilities. Let me also remind you that these risks that we are having today, disasters, they are not...
Sankara, I do apologize. Getting informed that your mic has an issue that needs to be fixed. We want to get you as clearly as we can. But want a quick response on this one as well. That if you look at the disaster preparedness in this country, just like Ruth Bolois put it this morning, let's go for an instance like the Mayu Mayu area. It has been now revealed that indeed officials knew very well that that particular tunnel was a danger, and over again they did nothing about it until we ran into this particular situation. That recklessness, that freestyling approach of this particular issues is what sort of exposes the government, because once the Met Department warned, they would like to think that the first areas to be looked into were issues like those, especially in Mamayo.
I think I want to agree with my colleague 100%, Ruth Bolo,
yes,
that all these things we need a very serious change in mindset.
Yes,
in terms of how we handle most of our crisis situations in our country.
Yes,
because we have been through a lot, and I think we've not learned. The one in Mayu, and the focus of Ruth Polo to say that all my eyes are on the county government. The county, it was responsible of county government of Kiambu to see that that dump, that hole that was there, was a disaster in waiting.
Yes,
and they should have been able to put in place measures early enough to make sure that we didn't get to where we are now. We're losing more than 170 lives or so. It's also about moral responsibility from our leaders. You remember, it is normally said, Mr. Simba, that statements from leaders had the ability and power to change the political direction and many other things. When the former Prime Minister recently was in Mukuru Kwanyega, for example, and then government was telling people, don't move out, musiende, mnaenda wapi, nini. And the government is trying to say, this is another disaster in waiting, because most of those people have built on riparian land, and anything can happen, they will be swept away. And the government is trying to tell them, no, please, good people, we want you to be on safer grounds. Work with the county government, national government and administration officers to identify a place where you can be moved for now, so that at least you are safer ground. And then there comes a leader and tell them, don't go. And then you realize that our leaders also need to be responsible, because at the end of the day, there is a time that that disaster will strike, and those people are swept away. What will you answer to Kenyans? So we need moral responsibility from our leaders, both in government, both in opposition, because at the end of the day, we are all in this together as Kenyans.
Pretty much. Sankara, just we'll point you out to where I want to respond as well. And one thing that we mentioned, if you look at the summary on the dailies this morning, they're talking about the issues that we've seen in it. There's one area that is of key concern as well, that indeed the city's infrastructure, the areas that have been entrenched on, and especially waterways and riparian land, have now come visible during this particular flooding. But then one trend is coming out, Sankara, that demolitions and mass evacuations are happening at low-income areas. There's a story that we did here that major parts in the Runda estate, a very posh part of this city, are on riparian land, but we haven't seen demolitions and evacuations in this area. Why that disparity in the government's approach in this particular issue? If we wanted to correct it, now would be the time to correct it wholeheartedly across the city.
Simba, I think it should be added in the list of calamities that befell the people of Kenya. There another calamity that you should pray add, not to eat you, not even your family, is poverty. Because a poor man is not a Kenyan. Maybe you are only a Kenyan by virtue of holding an ID and voting for UDA. Otherwise, your rights and privileges are declared suspended. Because poor people have no voice. You see now, the riparian land, which is a reality, riparian land conversation is coming up. But we only see demolitions in Mukuru, Kwanjenga, Madare. We haven't seen them along these posh and leafy suburbs where the who and who's are staying. It's only the Olpolois who deserve to move away from the riparian land and create room for the government to construct this affordable housing. Because I'm quoting what President William Ruto said. I went to Madare myself. He said, we are going to allocate 10,000 for each household to temporarily secure their livelihood as they tend to sort out the problem for the next 3 months. Simba, where in this city can you dwell with 10,000 for 3 months? You have no food. This is someone who has been affected wholesomely, and I mean, there are no beddings, no nothing. Children are soon going to school. Then the government comes in and gives you 10,000 and tells you, you know what, you are going to use this to stay for the meantime. That is also raising the questions on how, is government really committed to the citizens, to the leadership responsibility. Another thing that happens here is allocation for money for burials. This calls for disaster management. Kindiki in his mindset thinks that this disaster or this calamity is an azimio demonstration where you can deploy the paramilitary and the military and the police without proper equipment to even do evacuations and etc. This is not a demonstration. This is a calamity. Disaster management, when you refer to the disaster management policy of 2009, disaster has got 3 segments. That is mitigations, response, and preparedness. But preparedness comes before. What do we call disaster preparation? A disaster preparation is where the government, through keen interest, identifies and highlights areas of potential risk, makes adequate effort to ensure that the risk is averted. Aversion can only be done with evacuations. You cannot evacuate people without alternative settlement or opportunities. So even the opposition's leaders' remarks of telling people not to move is right in the sense of humane. Yes. Why should I move and I don't have alternative settlement ground? When we talk of disaster management and preparation, you prepare, I've just said you evaluate and know the potential areas. You tell the people that because of the potential risk that is pending, we as a government, because our responsibility number 1 is to protect lives, we are going to move you to safer areas. This is going to be done in a procedural way where your rights as a citizen will be retained with dignity. You don't come and demolish houses, killing even a child in, was it in Madare or where? Where the government demolished an house with a sickle cell baby or child in the house, and the woman, she's in the public domain. I mean, all this calls for carelessness. The government is not committed. So when we talk of disaster, the government has done absolutely very little, if not too much politics. You see the government spokesperson going to speak to the people of Kisumu, Jothurwa, we are trying this. Trying what? Our government has got the responsibility to deliver. You can plan before we get there. You don't need to implement these knee-jerk reactions where you go and evict people in the midst of a disaster. And now let me come back to why the government cannot declare this as a disaster. Synonymous with our leadership is theft of public resources. There is no corruption in Kenya. This is outright theft of public resources and money, looting without shame. The government can only declare disaster where foreign aid is at their disposal for loot and stealing. Where the government responsibility of spending comes in, that is where you will see Kindiki deploying police instead of deploying the necessary equipments required or necessary to evacuate the people from those mudslinging areas, flood-affected zones to safer zones. So the government is not really committed into addressing the issue as a disaster. If 33 counties have been affected out of 47 counties, over 200 lives have been lost. Do you want to wait for Jesus to come back so that you declare this as a disaster? This calls for humanity. We have dealers, just as I say, without any fear of favor, who are acting as leaders. Kiprotich here will tell you that the government is doing its best, while the worst I've seen is to deploy the military, and some of them cannot even work on themselves. They have to be supported, and these are the men and women we are looking upon. May his soul rest in peace, the general. We lost a very strong man, a man who could lead his people in the morning runs. Now we have military officials who cannot even work on their own. These are the people who are going to be deployed to go and rescue people. Where are the equipment? So we are not wholesomely against the deployment, but we want a resource-based deployment where there are necessary tools and equipments to rescue the people. The government is treating this as a casual azimio and Kenya Kwanza, we call them peaceful interactions where the police turn it to be violent. So we really need to have people do what it is necessary, because just as I said, when you refer to the, how do you call it, that disaster management policy of 2009, this thing we call floods and drought, they are not new phenomenon to this country. This is an opportune time for the government to invest heavily on harvesting this rainwater. This is the time we should not complain of power outage, because our dams have the capacity. The turbines can run freely because water is above the margin. This is the time to harvest water, store it safely for irrigation, because in the next few months we are going to decry of the same areas that are crying floods are the same areas that are going to cry for water. This same government will deploy water in small units of clean water tanks to save the people just for politics. So we really need to have the right things done at the right time. We are staring at a potential crisis, a crisis where we are not going to have food. Remember, the government through the CS agriculture is now supplying fake fertilizer to the people. Floods which the First Lady prayed for rains. Rains have now come in form of floods. So floods are sweeping people. The government is supplying fake fertilizer. We are observing free water going into waste and killing people. Then in the next 10 months, we are going to cry of drought. And Kiprotich will tell you in his right senses that the government is doing all it can to save the people. What are you doing? You are doing the best to plunge this country into more trouble than it is today.
On that note, if you can take a minute, because we actually do have only 6 minutes left. Can you take a minute before we touch on the last issue?
Yes. So he's spoken about the policy and the act, and we've always established that the issue in this country, the issue we've always had as a nation, is in implementation. We've got the best policies, we've got the best laws, we are always rushing and competing. County A has launched this policy, County B, but when it comes to implementation, that's where we shortfall. So for me, it is just a challenge to, number one, I'll start with national government. We've got there is no ministry right now that does not have a role to play when it comes to the flood disaster. If you mention any ministry, I can tell you exactly how they can come in.
They are tied.
If you, when you talk about agriculture, he talked about it. We've read that people, some of the crops have been swept away by floods. We are seeing, we are seeing what is happening. What has the Ministry of Agriculture done? When you talk about the infrastructure, I don't even need to mention that. Even gender, we've got a lot of women that are unable to, go and access maternal health care. They're unable to give birth in hospitals because the roads are flooded. We've got a lot of them who are stuck in the shelters and in the flooded homes because of being able to, of course, access that, and their children are unwell. We've got women who, we even saw it in the video that you played, have lost their children. They're not able to see them because these children have been swept by floods. So if you mention whatever ministry, they have a role to play. So this is a time where we need to all come together. Each ministry has to, there's a holistic effort that needs to be placed here.
Yes.
Each and every one of them needs to put their best foot forward to ensure that from all angles we are able to, counter this. It's also a call to civil society organizations, especially those who border on, accountability and on governance. This is a time to now put these elected leaders to task. This is about time that we put these parastatal bodies to task. It's about time that we put the different ministries, both at national level and at county level, to task. That would be my
pretty much. Kip, if you can allow me, it is a story that we've touched on. One vehicle injury. It's something that we wanted to touch on this morning as well, because we do know that that particular hearing has officially kicked in. I want to take you back to that parliamentary session where that motion was essentially approved. Let's take a look, come back, take 5 minutes, talk about it before we step out of the studio this morning.
Members, I beseech you as your colleague, that let's listen to the suffering of the Kenyan people, of the Kenyan Wamboi, of the Kenyan Wanjeku, who cannot be here to speak. Please, for once, let's listen to them. It is not about parties. It is not, and I insist, it is not.
The results of the vote are as follows. Ayes 149. Order, the noes 36, abstentions 3. The threshold required to carry the vote is 117. So the vote is carried, the ayes have it.
Order. Honorable Speaker, if you read through Standing Order 64 to 66 of our standing orders, you will realize that the Honorable Wamboka's motion falls flat and contra our standing orders and also the Constitution, Honorable Speaker. Has the mover of this motion, Honorable Jack Wamboka, created or shown us that nexus between the person being removed from office as cabinet secretary and the alleged grounds of removal? And the straight answer, Honorable Speaker, is none.
Honorable Speaker, the appointing authority, who is the President of the Republic of Kenya, should have taken the action, the most logical action, and fired Honorable Linturi. But because both Linturi and the President have failed to do what the Constitution requires them to do, this House has got a duty, therefore, under the Constitution.
That's it. Just 5 minutes left for this particular conversation. Kip, how did it get here? And what was the President waiting for? He should have publicly declared that it doesn't support Mithika Linturi's sentiments on the fertilizer issue in this country, because not once did Mithika Linturi speak from the same script with the President. The President was convinced and apologized to the farmers on that fertilizer scandal. Mithika Linturi stood severally and said, there is no fake fertilizer in this country. Can you stop anybody who's talking about fake fertilizer in this country? Does not mean well for the farmers. So the President included. Did he have to take this long? 2 minutes. We're signing off.
Thank you. As I finish, allow me to take at least 10 seconds to just inform my friend Ruth Bolo that the government is approaching the flood situation in the country in an all of the nation approach. That is why a multi-agency team was formed that is now trying to respond to those issues. To my friend Sangara, when the government deploys military and NYS or anything else, those are the only machineries within the government, because they have the nursing, have equipment and know-how and many things that can help those situations in my
I decline the request to be informed.
As part of the grand plan to respond to all issues of climate action, climate change, we are declaring a national tree planting day on 10th of May. Responding to all those issues. You remember the President has a plan of 15 billion trees. So in the next 2 days, there will be a national tree planting day on 10th of May.
So where do you want to
plant trees? A gazette notice will be issued in due course. Anyway, on the issue of agriculture CS Mithika Linturi, I want to say this, and I've put out my views on this very clearly on my last week on Citizen TV and many other things.
Yes.
I would like to start by underlying, in this administration of Kenya Kwanza administration, there are very two signature projects that hold so dear for the President. Housing agenda and food security in the country, which we are now grappling with. So it was actually shame of the highest order that we found ourselves having a fake fertilizer in this country. And I've said this before. Parliament has taken its responsibility in terms of oversight and moving an impeachment motion, which I think, to me, in my view, is a step in the right direction. Mithika Linturi as a CS should be able to take political responsibility. Under this administration under leadership of President William Ruto, nobody should be able to joke with food security and other pet projects of the President. So for person of CS of agriculture should not go away and punish those actions of having fake fertilizer. First of all, how did he find ourselves there, having fake fertilizer? So I hope Parliament proceed with the impeachment motion to conclusion, and if it succeeds, it's also a redemption moment for Parliament, because Parliament has been, over time, has been accused of being corrupt. So if it push on with this case to the end, then we'll applaud Parliament, and then we hope.
Allow me to inform you in just one sentence.
Yes, with 1 minute. In fact, it's actually your time to speak. 1 minute.
There is more to curbing climate change than just planting trees. And that's where we get it wrong. So for Kip to tell us that the President is addressing all these issues by planting trees.
There's an approach. Part of it is this.
Yes.
As part of mitigation
I think
measures.
Kip, we can replay the clip. We can replay the clip because I heard you word for word. But I think I need to stress that there is more to curbing climate change than just planting trees. There are efforts that need to be done. We're talking about the multi-agency committee or multi-agency council that has been formed. We've not yet seen them. And I will tell you, we need to start thinking and discussing from a point of, not from a point of knowledge or from a point of being privileged enough to sit in those seats.
Yes.
Let's start to reason and consider the common wananchi, what they're going through. Do they have this information? Do they have hotline numbers that they can call? Do they know that they exist and how to access them? We need to stop thinking from a point of privileged citizens who sit in those decision-making spaces, but now think about the common wananchi.
That is wrong. Let's challenge that. Information numbers to call have been put out there every day on media.
We have people on screen who are crying.
And Kip, I'll be coming back
We
to
have
you
a
on that.
national government
Here's the thing,
Common
Sankara.
Wananchi
Why are you protesting and you're not even...
Common Wananchi is not aware. We've seen the clips on TV.
45 seconds, 45 seconds, Sankara. If you can, 45 seconds on this particular issue for Mithika Linturi. They have to get here. Sankara, 45 seconds only, sir.
In a society where appointments and employment do not reward merit, qualifications, and competency, you end up with a bunch of failures like Mithika Linturi and his bosses. These are people who do not know, appreciate what should be done in the right way. Mithika Linturi shamelessly came out to educate us on how this fake fertilizer was soil conditioning. I want to tell Mithika Linturi that I took agriculture as part of my courses, scientific course. So you cannot sell fake fertilizer in the name of a fertilizer and still claim that you are addressing food sustainability. In my own opinion, going forward, I think there should be no law to protect one life while losing over 50 lives. I think we should be inhuman enough to introduce penal codes where we hang thieves in the public domain, so that we as a people of Kenya, you see, our country has got a leadership that likes making reference. When they are failing, they make reference to Uganda. When they are stealing from the citizens, they make a reference to tax scheme in America and the GDP in Europe. Where they draw the line is telling us that in China and Japan, if you steal, you are sentenced to death in the public. So people like Linturi should be arrested and charged with capital offenses. Simba, this is not a matter of time. This is
We gotta step out. We gotta step out.
Food cycle in this country, and the president is just there addressing affordable housing, as if affordable housing is too urgent than the fake fertilizer that is being supplied by Linturi.
Here's the thing, Sankara. Guess what? I'll make sure we go get him next time. So we start this show a bit early, so we give him all the time that he needs. Guess what? At Lookuptv across all your social media platforms, take them right there. Back to the time that he joined us in the studio this morning at Kiaga Simba. That's where and thank you very much for participating. Ruth, Sankara, Kip, despite the traffic situation in the country. We've come to the end of it. Thank you very much. Always lovely to host you.
Thank you.
All right.
We value your feedback and welcome your complaints about our programming and operations. Feel free to get in touch with us through 0700